Music on. How's everybody doing tonight? Give me one in the chat if you can hear me. Shout out to the Pacers. What's up, Jeffrey Johnson? Glad you can make it. You see it on the screen. I'll talk a little bit about Control Tower. Last week we talked about Landing Zone. This is just the automated version of Landing Zone. Manage. What's up, Regine? Glad you can join me. Give me one in the chat if you can hear me. Appreciate you. I am tired. You know how we do it. If you got any tech or cybersecurity questions, just drop them in the chat. We're going to kind of flow through it so we can go watch the Pacers. So once again, just drop any tech or cybersecurity questions in the chat. We're going to get started. Like here, I'm struggling today. I'm always struggle streaming. Shout out to Security Expert. Thanks for joining me. So what is Control Tower? It's the managed, well-architected, a whole bunch of accounts. We talked about all those accounts. I should grab some more of those slides from last week. But once again, Landing Zone. Just going to paraphrase. A well-architected, multi-account environment based on security and compliance best practices. Control Tower automates the setup of the new Landing Zone using best practices blueprints for identity, federated access, and account structures. Create a multi-account environment using AWS organizations. We talked about that 2 weeks ago. Provide identity managers using default directory found in with AWS IAM. What's up, security expert? Once again, use that federated using IAM Identity. Centralized logging using CloudTrails and AWS Config. Stored into your S3 bucket. And once again, your security audits using the IAM Identity Center. So once again, a lot of times when you work for a client or smaller client, when the consultants come in, they're actually going to do AWS Landing Zone. And 9 times out of 10, the bigger clients, they're actually going to spin up AWS Control Tower. All right, because once again, we'll look at the architecture it's going to set up for you. Most people know I'm a NIST guy, so this is what you would set up if you do a NIST, CMC, HIPAA, high trust. This is kind of like the base setup for best practices, especially for federal client where you have federal compliance. Once again, you see you have AWS Control Tower. It's going to use AWS organization, which is going to flow down to Landing Zone. Then the OUs, kind of like in Windows, you have a security OU where you have your auditing user and your log archive user. Your sandbox, you have your development and test users. In your root, you have your management user that's going to manage everything. Then you have your production OU users, organizational unit. Then in there, you have your production user. Then once again, of course, you add on there. You probably would have, if you were production company, you might have your production bills over there. You might have a kind of bigger company OU, and in there you could have your marketing, your accounting, and other users that you would use to manage your org. Because in there too, you would give them an account for accounting, payroll, and HR. So those are some of the additional OUs and accounts you would have that you would, extend your control tower accounts to. Part of that is you get your configuration, governance, and extensibility. One thing we're going to dig into the automated account configuration. Automates account deployment, enrollment by means of an account factory. In the landing zone, they call it a vending machine, which is built as an abstraction on top of provisional products in your AWS catalog. Centralized governance, the second paragraph, by employing the capabilities of AWS organization, Tower was set up a framework to ensure consistent compliance and governance across your multi-account environment. And we're going to take in the red, we're going to talk about service control policies and resource policies. So how can we govern our OUs and our users to use certain things we want them to do, and basically have guardrails to make sure we're governing those accounts, governing how they're the process of using, and governing how they're processing data. Extensibility, you can build or extend your AWS Control Tower environment by working directly with AWS organization. In the Control Tower console, you can see your changes reflected in the AWS Control Tower after you register your existing organization and enroll your existing accounts into your AWS Control Tower. We're definitely going to dig into that account factory, because that's something, especially as a GRC person, you want to make sure you have configuration management there so your accounts can have tagging, security, proper OU, and least privileges when they create those accounts. So that's definitely a big part of the GRC. Once again, if you have any general questions, just drop them in the box. And once again, the web architecture, and we kind of talked a little bit about that in paragraphs form. You have your AWS Control Tower. In the top, you have your Identity Center. Then part of your Identity Center is you could use IAM Identity Center, SAML. The most things I usually see is Microsoft Active Directory. You can use AFDS. AWS has connectors so you connect to your on-prem, because you don't want to recreate those groups, recreate those authentications. You could just take your AWS tenant and use the connector and just attach it to your on-prem like the Active Directory. Or a lot of people run an AFDS in the cloud, so that's what you would use to, once again, to get your privilege and your federation. And to the right, we talked about that landing zone, well-architected multi-account. So those are your multi-accounts you see down there. What's up, Jim R? Glad you can join me. Then some things we're going to talk about, once again, the governance part, preventive guardrails, disallow API actions using SCP. Or you could use detective guardrails are used for governance and compliance. I actually use both of those, preventive and detective. Right? We're going to dig down into that. See those, I'll call them like those documents next to those. Those are your service control policies. So what can you do in production? So in production, I probably would say, these are the type of EC2s you can spin up in production. These are certain size. You can spin up like MongoDB, so I will block certain services that I wouldn't want you using in production. Same thing over there with development, right? I wouldn't want you to spin up a production-sized database in development. So I would say you can spin up this type of database, this small size of EC2 for testing. Right, so that's what those, once again, preventive guardrails and detective guardrails, and we're going to dig into that a little further. So from a governance and GRC perspective, those are two, once again, big services you could use to, once again, govern your tenant. Once again, drop any questions in there if you have them. Did I close it on accident? there it is. Let's get in shared accounts. We looked at those. You have your management account to use to launch AWS Control Tower. The root user is an IAM administrator with full access. Log Archive account contains central Amazon S3 bucket for storing copies of all your control, your cloud trail, and config log files for all other accounts. I probably put my CloudWatch trails in there too. Aggregate the store logs collected from all other accounts in the landing zone. Security account with restrictive access. So you got your log archive account. Then you have your audit account. We were looking at those in the best in the best architectural design. Once again, service control policies is governance and account orchestration services that simplifies setting up of the secure and multi-account services. It's part of a governance, the security service control plan to enforce compliance and security rules across accounts automatically. What are guardrails? Pre-configured governance rules and control tower that use SCPs, once again, service control policies, and AWS Config rules behind the scene to enforce or detect violations. Preventive guardrails implements using SCPs. Detective guardrails using AWS Config rule. Like the SCPs can block it. Config rules, you say, this is the rule I want. It'll detect it that you have it set up wrong. Then a lot of times you will send out the email to security or the project manager or the development lead of that team. So what are preventive guardrails? Predefined security and compliance control tower that uses SCP to block non-compliant actions in your AWS account or organizational unit level. They prevent specific operations before they can happen, unlike detective guardrails, which only monitor for a violation. They're using JSON. We'll look at a couple of those. SCP is automatically created. That SCP is attached to the target OU. All AWS accounts in the OU are subject to the SCP. The SCP overrides any permission granted by the IAM policy within the effective account. So I think that's what gets a lot of. You say this user can do a certain action, but you don't know you have an SCP on that account, right? So the SCP will actually override your IAM policy that you giving rights to that particular user. And we'll talk about different ways. You can look at an IAM policy service. It'll run through there and say, okay, these are the permissions, and these are what's blocking certain permissions. Because they're gonna give you things to help you debug some of those complex issues. What's up, Kevin Nunes? Glad you can join me. It's going over AWS Control Tower. We probably live it next week. I got to figure out how to make it cheaper. So that's one reason I ain't set up any live. So we'll definitely get back to live next week. I might just set up the SCP in the landing zone of what it'll look like, though. So we'll dig into there. Feature enforcement, action block before. What's up, Ty? Technology, implement using AWS service control policy. The scope, it applies to the account of the OU level. User controls, users cannot modify SCP created by Control Tower. Auditability, Control Tower tracks guardrail enablements in its dashboard. So that's one thing we'll get set up as soon as set up Control Tower so we can look at that during the dashboard. Guardrail name and what is blocked. So these are some of the guardrail names in there. This allows deletion of a guard trail. We don't want anybody messing with our logging, right? I'll be able to cut it out. That being a cloud engineer, admin, DBA, all those cloud trails. Really, that's a federal check. Prevent turning off or deleting of cloud trail logins. Disallow changes to IAM policies. Block edits to an IAM policy. Disallow use of a root account. Prevents using credentials except for a few actions. This allows access to non-approved regions, prevent resource creation in certain regions. That's real big because in the federal space, especially FedRAMP, you can only spin up stuff in continental United States. So you want to make sure people can't spin up stuff in other regions like Brazil. I think they got a data center in Japan. AWS has data center around the world. So once again, you want to block it on making sure they're in the proper regions. If you're in the EU for GDPR, you want to make sure they just set it up in the EU and not set up GDPR resources in the United States, because then that will make all your data inside the United States have to follow GDPR. So that prevent resource creation in certain AWS regions, super important. This allow internet access, block EC2 instances, or not gateway with a public IP address. So we'll get to the internet. We just don't want once again, the EC2 to have direct access to the internet. Usually we put those in the private subnet, put in that gateway in the public subnet, and the public subnet can get to the internet. That's a lot of times that's a federal check too. Why do you do that? Because you don't want people on the internet to easily get to your EC2 and be able to attack it, right? So to get to it, right, they have to go to your public, get to your private, then attack it. So that's why a lot of times they keep that, they want that separation. Once again, let me know if you got any questions or tech or cybersecurity, put them in the box. Like I said, I don't think we're going to be here too long. PBO got to go check on the Indiana Pacers, see how we doing. Shout out to us. How to create guardrails. Once again, we talked about that. Enable AWS Config. These are detective guardrails. Manage AWS Config rule is activated. The rule evaluates to a specific predefined logic. Non-compliant resources report into the AWS dashboard or AWS Config console. So there's a few ways to check it out. And two, also, it'll flow down the security hub if you have that activated. I need to go check on my security hub, make sure my bill's not too crazy. Like I said, I only had like 2 EC2s in there, so I think it'll get too crazy. Here's some of the detective guardrails, right? Detective means we have Lambda and AWS Config. Go check it. Then it'll email to us, right? It's not going to block it. It's just going to notify us. Detect public S3 bucket. Flag the bucket with public access. S3 bucket, that's the rule in config. That's going to check for you. Detect unrestricted security groups. Flag open access to the ports. Restricted SSH, restricted common ports. So 000 means it's open up to the world. So unless you got a website that you actually open it up to the world. So if somebody's SSHing, you should be getting their IP address or their IP address or range. You shouldn't let anybody on the internet. Now let's be real. You can spoof an IP, but that takes a little more work, right? And a little more talent. Detect encryption disabled. Flag resources, volumes, buckets without encryption. See, EBS, S3, or server-side encryption should be enabled. So those, once again, are in the AWS config. Detect untagged resources. Check for required tags on resources. It's on your EC2s because you might be building it to a different team or a different division. You want to say this is a app server or a web server or a database server, because then you can start doing automation on those particular resources too. So that's why you want to make them tag them. So what's your standard tagging? With billing, some people have a billing number, division, type. A lot of times if it's FedRAMP or if it's HIPAA, right? Because then you start segmenting your resources, and that helps you with your audit. Detective Cloud Trail is not enabled, right? So those are some of the basic detective guardrails. So what is account factory? Those are two or three big questions I get asked a lot is, are you using AWS Organizational Tower? Once again, this is going to give you that best of breed setup. Then two is, how are you governing it? How are you, once again, from a GRC perspective or assessment, how are you auditing those particular resources? And two, we talked about account factory, template-based provision provided by AWS Catalog. It's built on AWS Control Tower. You can also use AWS Service Catalog. Create a new account with pre-approved configurations, such as what OU is going in, what network is going in. A lot of times the account is based on a group, which is your job responsibility. Like I'm security, so I'll get these particular OUs. I have view and production. I can get to security hub, right? If I'm networking, I can just get to network and some IT stuff. If I'm in accounting, right? So your service catalog, I have in there these type of job functions. And when you click on it, it's going to give you create an account, like they said, pre-approved configuration for their particular job functions. Automated account set up with governance, security, and network baselines. Right. So once again, we want to have those baselines because that's our baseline configuration and how we want to track and how we want to keep it together. Let's see what's going on. Shout out to my man Zhu. Like explanation, just a query how to control multi-AWS account if the SCPs is different. Two, I mean, that's an excellent question. Is usually you're going to configure your SCP for that particular OU, once again, off of your job functions. And we'll dig a little bit in there. Hey, let me roll back real quick. What is account factory? So here we have our standard OUs. So depending on what OU you have, would tell you what type of SCP you have on there. Once again, if it's a preventative or a detective. So once again, in sandbox, so development and tests, I'm going to say you can spin up this type of EC2, this type of database, this type of web server, right? Because once again, I'm putting guardrails on what I'm going to let you do as a development team. And once again, some of the security ones is you can't delete CloudTrail. You got to have encryption on your EC2s, your block devices, your S3. So those are some of the SCPs you would have on those particular resources. The cool thing is we're going to dig on that, not tonight, but in the future. They have some predetermined job functions inside CloudTrail to kind of get you started. So, you know, because that's kind of a big deal because getting least privileges and getting all those spin up and the right configurations can be rough. Let's see. Computer science technician and network installer program at MT, where I'm learning everything from building fixed PT and set up network. That's cool, man. I would focus on make sure you get that networking. People really don't fix PCs as often. I think that's a nice skill to have. I work for very large companies. We buy them by the trainload. I used to work for the Indiana State Department of Revenue. The state of Indiana was, buying 5,000 laptops. So they were getting a killer price on them. So most people don't solder laptops anymore. You might replace a hard drive, but most times, man, they're just going to ship it out and just put something in. Especially a lot of people going lightweight and using thin clients are now coming in the future. But good luck on there, man. I still think IT is definitely a good skill to have. I think network is always going to be around there. AWS have their own networking. Most people have on-prem. They're using Palo Alto or Cisco routers. And you take your on-prem and your AWS, you make it look like one network. So those are definitely good skills. You could definitely check me on Network Bruh. So I'm in a couple people's channels that actually do networking. So I usually give those guys security checks for a network. So shout out to my man Network Bruh. Doing a real IT work, deep into cybersecurity. Okay, shout out to Cali, love Wireshark. Set up. Okay, I should have kept reading. My bad. Love VMs. Let's go hanging. Working on certs. Yep, get those certs, man. Okay, let's see. All those are good certs right now. No, all those are good skills. All those are relevant. So now it sounds like you're in a good program. My question: anybody keep me awake? No, I'm with you. I'm with you. Some of this stuff is pretty sleepy. Now I'm with you. I'm trying to keep myself awake. Once again, let's talk about the account factory. We want to make sure we're creating our accounts in a standard way. And once again, best practices for AWS. A template-based provisioning tool. Shout out to Control Tower, built on top of the AWS Service Catalog. That's one video I don't think I have is an AWS Service Catalog. How to create a new account with pre-approved configurations. My man was talking about that. Network U placement, what group you should be in. Once again, we usually do that from a job function perspective. Automated setup with the governance, security, and network baselines. Part of that is automated account creation. Create account once again with the guardrails security baseline. OU placements automatically enroll the account into specific organizational units. So once again, when we spin that up, we're going to pick a job function, and that job function is going to place us in a proper OU. Single sign-on configuration, how we're going to use IAM Identity Center for that federation. Then baseline networking, operational setup. We're going to have shared VPCs, subnets. So in our networking users, we're going to have multiple VPCs, virtual private clouds. So in there, one of them might be virtual BC for production, for networking, for development, right? Because we want to physically and logically separate those environments, right? And one of them can't talk to the other one. So depending on your job functions, which will give you access to which VPCs you should get in there. A lot of times you're probably going to be in multiple VPCs. So custom account blueprint, offer parameters to configure accounts according to your organizational standards. Once again, our naming, our billing codes, part of the name on when we spin up EC2s for those accounts. How do they get marked? Production, development, web server, app server, right? Because a lot of times your account holds those particular resources. So if you're in the production account, all those resources in EC2 get spin up in that production account. So since it's in that production account, we know how to tag those elements that are owned by that production account. Just some stuff off the control tower, how you would get to it. Once again, you fill in the account name, email, organizational unit, right? That'll be where our job functions come in. Single sign-on group and VPC settings is if it's optional, right? The cool thing is if you need more granularity, you can set up a Terraform. Terraform is just a tool to let you spin up stuff in different like Azure or AWS or Google, right? So you see it right there. Use infrastructure as code to provision accounts, support custom configuration. We talked about tagging and we talked about ECPs in a resource. More scalable than the manually formed base, right? So a lot of times I would just use the AWS service for that, but a lot of people would do Terraform because we talked about that. Most companies, especially large companies, are multi-cloud. So they use your Terraform scripts in AWS. They use their Terraform scripts in Azure. They use their Terraform scripts in Google. So they want to have one set of scripts that they can use. Once again, I just usually use AWS scripts because that's kind of usually what I focus on. What's up? Some behind the scenes, we talked about using the service catalog. I usually use the AWS version of that as the cloud formation templates. Create accounts, once again, OUs, baseline roles, guardrail, automatically enroll in control tower, and how to govern it. When you newly provision accounts, security baseline, networking, that's what we need to drill down into because, right, certain users are going to be, once again, getting in certain networks. Like security, we're going to have access to every probably network out there. We wouldn't be able to change it. We would just have view on it. So we want to look at the subnet. We got to scan it to make sure it's controlling traffic right. A lot of times in the subnet and the route tables, you got security groups, right? Or you got the NAT firewalls, security groups. So you want to look at all that because you got to scan it from a assessment perspective and once again be able to get to it. Once again, single sign-on, identity center, looking at the users and groups. Once again, SCP and the guardrails inherited from OUs in its place. Logging, we're going to have CloudTrail and standardized logging, which would be the cloud watch logs. So once again, AWS Control Tower is letting you set this up in a managed way. So you're not running different scripts and trying to set it up yourself. A lot of people set it up, it was just a heavy lift. So this is their way to try to make it an easier lift. Once again, best practices, once again, OU-based structure. We looked at some of those OUs, Dev, Test, Pride, and Sandbox. Standardized account names with emails. Dev 01 group, so what does that look like? Use Account Factory for Terraform for scaling many accounts. Once again, I would use the AWS version of this. And 2 is once you spin up those accounts, how you going to tag it, baseline deployment, how you going to set up the logging and the monitoring. Once you set it up, when you spin up a user, Control Tower is going to make sure you spin it up in a standard way so you can track it. Once again, their base setup was like $400 a month, which I thought was a little pricey. So we're going to set up. We just got to figure out how to do it a little cheaper. Once again, AWS organizations, you would set it up manually. AWS Control Tower, once again, is their managed version of that. So you get extended capabilities of AWS organization. You get landing zone best practices. You get federated access with IAM Identity Center. Centralized logging, and what we just look like the account factory, right? It's automated because once you're a large company, once again, when I was at the state, they had 30,000 employees. So, a good division might have 2,000 employees. So you need to figure out how to automate that account. So when somebody on board, right, this is the account, hit this button, it's going to spin up everything in AWS you need. And 2 is the script should also do your on-prem stuff because you want to standardize it all of it and have it automated. So that's what I want to just touch on at a high level. And the part about that too is, once again, how do you do assessments on it? That's my thing, GRC. How do we watch it? How do we be able to assess it? Here, I dropped the link down if anybody wants to come up. Like I said, I'm going to go. I had a long day. I'm at the... There it is. I can't find a link to. But yeah, so that's it. Like I said, I just want to touch on it. I get that question a lot. How would you set up a well-architected AWS tenant? So I would use AWS Org or probably AWS Control Tower. The only problem with Control Tower, I mean, if you're a business, $300 or $400 a month is not a lot, but trying to get comfortable labbing that. It looked like all the prices came from the networking piece, so I might spin up in the lab and the stuff that costs a lot. Just shut those down until I'm ready to lab it. So that's kind of what I've been walking through. A lot of it's so integrated, so I just want to be able to spin it up and shut it down. I usually do that with each individual service, but Control Towers so integrated. I just want to make sure I'm comfortable with those individually, and I won't get stung with a big AWS bill. But that's where we're trying to get to. Whew, man, I'm tired. I'm ready for the holidays to hurry up and get here. I'm struggling. Cool thing is a lot of people from work is going to be gone, so I got to catch up on a few things at work. But once again, just hitting on the AWS. Somebody asked me when I was at consultant, a lot of the vendors I have to do assessments on, 70% of those were AWS. So I just really start learning AWS so I can get comfortable when I do those type of assessments. Because once again, most of the third-party assessments I were doing was in AWS. I do. It really depends on who I'm working for. Like a lot of the small, medium-sized companies I work for to do spreadsheets. When I was working at the state, we did spreadsheets, but they were running some of the bigger clients were running Archer. I've seen Drata use. I've seen Open Pages. So it really just depends on the size of the company. But the weird thing is, even in a lot of those big tools, they spit them out in a spreadsheet format for you. So yeah, I've been doing stuff in. I Office 365. Shout out to my man, Combo Courses. Your E3 license, which most people have, you get 25 programs. So I'm gonna start using those programs for GRC. They have approvals in there, so you can actually take a policy in a Word document, send people email, then they will have to approve that policy. That's kind of built in. You can have it have multiple approvals or one person approval. Then once that gets approved, you can actually make it read only inside of SharePoint. Then once it's dated, in a year, it will send out email telling them it has to be reviewed. So there's a lot of built-in tools inside Office 365 to try to get out of spreadsheets. But now spreadsheets still used a lot. So, but once again, I've used Archer is a crazy amount of money. Drata, Open Pages. There was one other smaller one. So anything small, people still using spreadsheets. I think I'm gonna lay down and go watch the Patients. I am tired. It was rainy and I had a long day. Once again, I'll hang out a little longer. Once again, I just want to touch on Control Tower. Really, once again, that and AWS organization. When you take each individual service and you kind of understand them, AWS says you need to put these services together because this is what a well-organized company should look like from their security perspective. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get to next, getting comfortable with organizations using the multiple accounts, how they have them set up, and what they recommended for you to do business. PBOs, have you ever used No, facts. I'm with you on that. No, I haven't used those two. Ventatiga, I have not. What's up, Jim? Nope, I haven't used those two. I don't think
Hey, what's up? What's up, PBO? Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, I haven't used those two before.
Oh, yeah, either have I. Yeah, it's funny when you mention I've used Archer, and we had this discussion before. It's like
Yeah,
it's good. It's like it's like a seam, right? It's
yeah.
you need a big budget and lots of years to get some value. But so many people still use spreadsheets or Jira or something else that's pretty low drag, low cost,
Oh yeah.
and these seems to be a little bit more geared towards the SMB crowds, the more
Oh
affordable. So I'm going to actually talk to these folks, see if I can fit those into my portfolio of offerings.
no, that's it. But no, you're right. Most people use, especially if you small, most people using spreadsheets. Shout out to
Oh.
Study GRC. They were using, how was the French? CISO Assistant. It looked like it was pretty cool. My only issue is it was a French company. A lot of
Yeah,
times when you do federal work, they want you to have at least have a United States office.
yeah, and it's so funny too because you get different products out there, and they've got different elements of GRC and
Mm-hmm.
risk management, continuous monitoring. So it's like, well, how do you sell yourself or differentiate yourself? Or it's like I'm like a Swiss knife, and it's like, oh, you do like 7 things all badly, and
No,
it's
I'm with you on that.
yeah. So yeah, that's the thing, and it's
That's what
always
my
trying to
boss used
just
to say. One-eyed man is king. One-eyed man in the land of the blind is the king. So I'm right there with you. You still there?
I'm still here, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but no.
I'm just tired too. It's funny. I just do different things. It's like we talked about. It's like just trying to stay current, because everything changes so quickly, and I got different client needs. And I took my just the other day, I took my Okta professional, and I passed that exam. So
Okay.
if I get enough energy in June, I'm gonna go for the Okta. What is it? Okta administrator. Yeah, there we go.
That's popular, man.
So we'll see. My wife's actually going through it. She's not an IT security person, but yeah. So we're hoping to get her something.
That's cool. Keep it all in the family. Yeah, Ty, if you look the landing zone, see where you have AWS organization, that's really the landing zone. Landing zone sits on top of organization and it starts automating a lot of features. Like we were talking about account factory. If you're not using AWS Control Tower, it's called vending machine. So landing zone helps you create an account vending machine as part of the landing zone. It does have auditing and log archive inside the landing zone. It's just not at this. You got to manage all that yourself. So the landing zone, you setting all that stuff up yourself. You're managing. Control Tower sits on all the top of that and does it as a managed service for you and the enterprise. If you're just using AWS organization and landing zone, you have to do a lot of that setup yourself. Like AWS organization and landing zone, you got to set up the preventive guardrails yourself. You got to set up the detective guardrails yourself. If you do Control Tower, it sets a lot of those guardrails up for you for your initial setup. So that's kind of the difference between landing zone and Control Tower. Landing zone is you doing a lot of that manually, setting it up to automate. AWS Control Tower is doing it as a managed service for you. So a lot of times they say Control Tower doesn't cost because you spin up all those services. You just paying for all the services you're spinning up. Let me know if that makes sense, Ty. I kind of rambled that, but that's kind of the difference. But now, congratulations on that, because Okta's super popular with medium to large size companies.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's Dr. Finesse.
Yeah. Hey, a real quick question. AWS, I play in Azure at times, and I'm really familiar with whatever they name there, Azure AD. Jesus, they changed names and everything. I can never remember Enterasys or whatever the heck it's called now, Entrust or whatever.
Yeah, Entrust.
But yeah, so that, and obviously directory services and now with Okta, but I've never ever gone into the AWS. What is it? IAM Identity Center. How is that? Is that pretty? I imagine it's pretty straightforward and it works really well and seamlessly integrates with with Active Directory and whatnot.
I'm gonna start. It's in there. I don't think it's as simplifies that I want to be, but that's some of that multi-account stuff I want to do. Like you said, because most people got Active Directory or AFDS in the cloud. So you're going to use those connectors because you don't want to set all that stuff over. So AWS has 3 connectors you can spin up to connect to AD.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start going through those, like you said, and kind of doing those setups. Because in real life, you're not going to recreate that. You're going to connect to Active Directory. You can do a one-way trust, two-way trust, basic connectors. If you're a small company, you can just sync the groups one way up to AD. So, like I said, there's a couple ways to do it.
Yeah, what's nice about Okta is like I've yet to find anything that's not, easy to integrate. No customization at all. It's just really, easy. So they do a good job with that. Of course, their security and getting breached, that's another issue. But
I don't really, when I was younger, that used to freak me out. If you're the number one product in that division, everybody's trying to hack you anyway, right? So I think you just get better, kind of fending that stuff off. Because that's why Windows get attacked a lot, because, they own most of the market a lot of times. So
yeah, people left the cloud alone. They just kind of said, oh, they had weaker targets. On the enterprise level, especially with small to medium sized entities, and it was a little bit more robust moving into the cloud, and but now there's just so much stuff over there, and people who've transitioned to it, they're really good on the infrastructure side of the house, but really weak as far as tightening closing the windows and stuff, putting out bad configurations that. There's just so much more focus on it. And there's so much more data that it's more lucrative.
Yeah, because that's one of the top 10 from OWASP is misconfigurations. I think it's 7 every year for the last 20 years almost. So they just moved the misconfigurations to the cloud. So now that's well, AWS gives you a lot of scanners to help you with those, but still.
Yeah, it's like, what is it, like breaches? There's nothing new under the sun, or in this case, nothing new under the cloud.
No, fine.
It's just to use an AI to re-engineer something.
Yeah, making it in. Once again, shout out to Dr. Finesse for joining us. Shout out to Ty. Shout out to my man Jim for coming up joining us. Shout out for Kevin Newts doing big things. Good luck in there. There's definitely a lot of resources on YouTube to help you with your studies if you need it. See, my man is Zool. Hopefully I picked that out right. Regime, security expert. Jeffrey Johnson. But yeah, and Chris, we're kind of about this up, and I'm finally kind of get there's just so many services sometimes. It's overwhelming between Azure and AWS, but it's like I got like 200 services or something crazy. So trying to get a handle on all of them, when to use them, and how to set them up correctly. It's kind of a beast. Shout out to my man Jim R. Check him out on LinkedIn. I'm over there right now on LinkedIn. I guess I should go check my check. If anybody's hitting me up on LinkedIn. So struggle streaming as always. Only thing I'll go check it out later. It should flow over here. I'll just spin it up here. You got any last words, Jim? I'm about to shut this down. I'm running out of steam.
No, it's funny because Tuesday I say, oh, it's Tuesday night. I get to tune into PBO, and then it's like after dinner I say, no, I'm feeling kind of tired. Maybe a beer and a bedtime sounds good. But yeah, I'm like you. I've just been tired lately. Just too much stuff going on.
It's funny. I just checked my LinkedIn account. You were like this. Senior marketing manager from SMB at Okta. They try to sell me something.
Oh, well, one thing I think I mentioned before is I'm on a ISAC, strategic group, working group for 2025, a strategy group. So we look at some issues, and one of the things we're looking at, like in the past, you can go back like I have. We did like convergence between like physical security and information security and all of these different things, and now we're doing a convergence between like IT security and OT, and so we deal with stuff like that. And then obviously another big one is artificial intelligence and everything. Yeah. and actually ISAC has got a new certification that's going to be in beta here real soon. They're taking applications, if anyone's interested in it. And I think it's 2 June. Just check out their webpage. I forgot what it's called. It's like AIISM or something like that. So, but they're really pushing it. And I think, like you look at things like over the last 20 years, we still deal with, vulnerabilities, or risks, it's like, control owners or system owners, the same old stuff. And here we're pushing all these advanced topics. But AI is really, 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 really pushing it out in everything. And really the landscape from 2025 to 2030, it's going to look so different. And it's like with me, it's like I put AI machine learning on everything, because otherwise you're going to be locked out of the job market if you can't speak that skill set, or at least demonstrate that you've got some practical knowledge that you can bring to the table. So always retooling. Got to keep myself working.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. Ty, it usually takes 5,000 to 10,000 hours to master something. So yeah, repetitive tasks. With me, I'm trying to lab. I'm trying to set up those type things, set up kind of real world scenarios. But yeah, you gotta be able to do it repetitive, because if you can't, a lot of times if you can't do it manually, you can't automate it too. So no, that's 100%.
Oh. Yeah, and just trying to figure out what the business moving way faster. Security's saying, hey, slow down here. We need to understand the data. We need to understand what the governance is for AI. And it's like, well, nope. If we don't do it, we're not competitive. So yeah. So we're just trying to fight to stay up in many of these endeavors.
No, that's it. So if you want to reach out to me, that's me on LinkedIn. I need to get a new picture. I still got a flip phone. I just use it as talking point, but that's my government name. If you want to come and find me on LinkedIn and link up, shout out. I'm usually out there with Dr. Finesse, Ty. Most people on here, I'm already hooked up with them on LinkedIn, but if you want to reach out to me, I'm there. So once again, I appreciate everybody for joining me. I'm got finished watching the Pacers, and for some reason I got super tired. I hope everybody has a great hump day tomorrow. PBO is out. Everybody have a good hump day tomorrow.